Last month, New York City announced it would spend over $10 billion on migrant services over the next 3 years. Shelters are overflowing. Schools are being converted into housing. The city is cutting police budgets to cover the cost. This is not a story about New York. This is the visible edge of a much larger system. Today is International Migrants Day, sanctioned by the United Nations. They will show you heartwarming videos. They will talk about diversity and compassion. They will tell you that migration is a humanitarian act. But I am not here to talk about feelings. I am here to talk about economics. And in the cold calculus of economics, mass migration, at this scale, in this design, is not a charity. It is a tool. It is labor arbitrage executed at the policy level. Let's look at the board. Who benefits from near-open borders combined with a welfare state? Does the working-class carpenter benefit when 1 million people arrive who are willing to do his job for half the price? No, his wages collapse. Does the straining hospital system benefit? No, wait times explode. Does the school system benefit? No, classrooms become overcrowded and underfunded. So who wins? The corporations, big agriculture, big tech, the construction giants, the hospitality chains. They get a flood of desperate, cheap labor. They don't have to raise wages to attract workers. They can suppress the entire labor market. If a local worker demands $25 an hour, the corporation can say, "No thanks, I have someone who will take $12 under the table." In practice, near-open borders plus a welfare state is a subsidy for the rich, paid for by the poor. Now, to be clear, migration has benefits too. New businesses, innovation, cultural exchange, ambitious people who build things. That's real. But in the current design, the distributional impact is brutally simple. Low-skill locals eat the wage cut, corporations pocket the savings, and taxpayers cover the social costs. This isn't about hating migrants, it's about refusing to let governments and corporations use them as disposable parts to keep a broken system running. Milton Friedman, the Nobel Prize economist, said it clearly. You can have a welfare state, or you can have open borders. You cannot have both. If you offer free healthcare, free education, and subsidized housing, and you invite the entire world to come and access it, the math breaks. The system goes bankrupt. We are watching this bankruptcy happen in real time. New York, Chicago, London, Paris. But there is a deeper layer, and this is where it gets uncomfortable. The native populations of the West, the US, Europe, Japan, Korea, are shrinking. We stopped having children. Why? Because the economic system is so broken that young people cannot afford homes or families. Instead of fixing the economy so people can afford to have children, the policy response has been to import a new population. This is not a fringe idea. The United Nations has published reports openly discussing replacement migration as a demographic tool, a way to maintain tax bases and pension systems as native populations decline. You don't need a secret plan when the incentives are this obvious. Demographers want taxpayers, corporations want workers, politicians want GDP growth. The result feels like replacement whether anyone uses the word or not. On a spreadsheet, it makes sense. You're low on working age population, so you import more. But spreadsheets don't capture culture. They don't capture social cohesion. They don't capture the tension that builds when communities change faster than they can adapt. And let's look at the other side, the countries these migrants are leaving. We call it brain drain. When the doctors, engineers, and the strongest young people leave Nigeria, Venezuela, or Syria to drive Ubers in London, who builds Nigeria? Who rebuilds Syria? We are extracting the human capital of the developing world to fill low-wage jobs in the West. It is neo-colonialism disguised as compassion. Here is the critical point. The migrants are not the villains. They are doing exactly what you would do in their position, trying to survive, trying to build a better life for their families. The system is the villain. It uses their desperation to crush your bargaining power. It treats human beings, both the migrants and you, as interchangeable units on a labor spreadsheet. In 2025, the migration crisis is a visible symptom of the empire's decline. Rome did not fall because the Visigoths were evil. Rome fell because the empire was hollowed out, the borders dissolved, and the people who were invited in as cheap labor eventually realized they were stronger than the emperor. So what is the architect's strategy? First, understand the labor market you are in. If your job can be done by a low-skill migrant with 2 weeks of training, you are in the kill zone. Your wages will never keep pace with inflation. You must move. Second, pivot to roles that require high trust and local knowledge. A migrant can frame a house. Can he navigate complex zoning laws and manage a high-end client relationship over 5 years? A migrant can drive a truck. Can he build and manage a specialized logistics network with local contracts? The moat isn't the task, it's the ecosystem around the task. Third, learn to manage labor, not just compete with it. The carpenter who stays a carpenter competes with the entire world. The carpenter who becomes a contractor, who builds a team, who owns the client relationship, he captures the margin instead of losing it. In practice, move from being the person who does the job to the person who owns the client, signs the contract, and assembles the team. The borders are dissolving. The nation-state is becoming an economic zone. You are no longer a citizen protected by a wall. You are a participant in a global labor market. Defend your position. Defend your leverage. And do not believe the humanitarian narrative. It is not about helping the poor. It is about feeding the machine cheap fuel, and you are standing in the intake valve. I am the architect, and I will see you tomorrow.